Well, how are you doing, Matteen? Sorry, I feel like I'm gonna. I've known you for years, but like when it comes to your last name, it's Zabanda Hadra.
Yeah, it's kind of mythic within itself. That's a good conversation starter. Zibana Jadrod. My dad always said that if he found a woman that could pronounce it on the first try, then he would marry her, and that was my mom. And there you go. 37 years later, there you go.
Nice. It's a good story to tell. And so how are things going during all of this? You are a recent graduate, so how first of all how was it? This last semester. What was it like dealing with online classes?
It was a little stranger. I've dealt with mostly online classes for a lot of my college career, and it's hasn't really been done in this setup though. So much of it is like, oh, you got to discuss this, you got to leave a comment on that, maybe write a paper, do a multiple choice test. But now with this kind of you have like a Zoom meeting with your teacher and the rest of the students in the class. It was definitely stressful in the sense that you didn't feel as much commitment to be at that class. You know what I'm saying? It's weird in terms of a class that you always meet for. It's 8 a.m. It's whatever. You get up, you take a shower, you go in, and because they'll know if you're not there. They'll see that you're not there. But then just disconnecting that another level, it's strange, and it took some getting used to, and it definitely wasn't as easy as some of my other semesters, but the goal was to get done and get out. And I'm happy to say that I've done that now.
How many classes were you taking?
Technically, I was taking 5 for the semester, but one of them was, or I guess 2 of them were like 2 different 9-week courses. So you do one that's in the front half of the semester, and you do one that's on the second half of the semester. And that kind of worked out well, just to balance out the load and not stress myself out too much for a life that I thought was going to have a lot going on, but does not currently.
So what was what was your degree in, and what were you looking to do as soon as college wrapped up?
One thing that I was looking at was trying to continue my the experience that I was working with my internship. Because I saw your work all the time. I was
like the sports stuff.
Yeah, I was a communications intern for KSU Sports, and that gave me so many opportunities for writing stuff like journalism for sports. It gave me unique opportunities for broadcast. My mentor, Nolan, who I look up to, gave me an opportunity to commentate with him on a soccer game for ESPN Plus.
Oh yeah. I was there that game. I remember you coming in the booth and
one of the few perks of that job is definitely seeing you around working the camera every now and then. But
thank you. You have no idea. Like I've been like even recently, I was filling out one invoice for one of the games I filmed, and like I gotta say, like I really miss work. I honestly miss being at like working that job.
Something we're going to discuss, I'm sure, is 2 of the biggest facets of my life are live music and sports, and both of them are essentially gone at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that is understandable. These kinds of things make the world take a pause, but I think it's going to make it that much sweeter when it comes back, and I think it's going to be another thing that this country and the world can kind of rally around when it comes back.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been saying, like, one thing that I do like right now is it feels like people are much more communal, and I'm kind of hoping that if longer social distancing leads to more of a chance that we stay that way, then I'm then I'm okay with if that ends up being the result of this. That there is a little bit more of there is that communal kind of like looking after each other, and like not just always being like about like whatever like you're doing. But to transition, you mentioning about music, like you're real into music, and obviously now like this the climate is not really like great, especially for live music. But how have you been able to manage this time?
I think you've got to, just like any other creative person has, I'm sure you have to find that outlet, because your brain is functioning at such a high rate and it's going into absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that I said to myself when it looked like this was going to be a while was, you've got to take something out of this. Like, you've got to be able to say you learned how to do something better, that you got a new skill. And my attention was first diverted to keyboard and piano, because it's really the one instrument I'm not that familiar with. Mm-hmm. And when I picked up my keyboard from Scott is my drummer for my band. When I picked up my keyboard from his house, I was like, you know what, let's just every day dissect this and see what we can learn from it. So that's what a lot of my energy has been going into, for sure.
Nice. Because before this, you'd played drums and you'd played guitar, or you played bass. Did you play guitar?
I played guitar. I played guitar for a band called Hypothetical. They're a band that's half based out of Philly and half based out of Atlanta. They kind of make more of a reggae type rock sound. I played guitar for them, whatever few shows they've had here. And for bass, I was playing bass for a band called Help Computer, which I don't know if you know this now, but we're sticking with that name.
I have hold on.
There you go. A limited edition Help Computer Kendama. But the only reason that we sold were because Hunter had just a bunch of them in wholesale, so he had to get rid of them for something, so he did it that way. But we were contemplating going through a name change because we recently lost a member, but we decided to stick with Help Computer because I think it's us. I think it's something that we embody well, and it's the imagery that we love, and it's the musicality that it's inspired by that we love. So I think we're sticking with it.
And I remember that you guys were working on an album coming out. So where are you in that album being released?
All of the music is recorded, and basically we're doing some final tweaks, final mixes, we're trying to decide if we want to add stuff like samples to it, quotes from movies that we like, stuff that we think is funny. Mm-hmm. We thought that was important, since it's an instrumental album, to incorporate some other aspects of it that people can, I guess, kind of sing to. And but that should be coming out real soon. And then hopefully by the time that this is all over, the album's called Pixelidian. Hopefully we'll have an album release show of some sort. I'm sure I'm going to see your.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't. I don't think I've missed a show. I mean, there's probably been a couple, but if there's a Help Computer show, I'm going to be at it.
By the time you went to the third show, I remember saying this to the band. By the time you went to the third show, like in a row, I had a band meeting with Scott and the rest of the guys. And I said, guys, I'm not gonna make Neil pay for any more shows. I can't do that to him. He's the only one that comes. I'm not gonna make him pay $10 at the door. He gets in for free every show. And I've tried to at least, stay good by that ever since then.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I remember seeing y'all perform, and it was just like I loved the, because it's all instrumentation, or it's just all instrumental, but like. The mind immediately wants to jump to, oh, they're a jam band, but that's not really kind of like what you embody. It's like, and so I really do believe like your band is like truly best experience live. Unfortunately, given the certain circumstances,
Yeah.
but but yeah, it's just like the way that you are able to blend everyone's instruments together in a way where everyone seems that at certain points it's like it definitely feels like every instrument is being represented, sometimes solo, sometimes like together, but it definitely feels like you, without like most bands like they're singing together. It seems like your instruments are kind of doing the same thing, musically.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that took a long time to craft. And I think it's still in the middle of being crafted, that sound. Because there were aspects of our early music that we felt were cluttered and were maybe just not focused in this. It's definitely fine for a bunch of different instruments to be playing different things, but it's all about, I think, the message of the music. And
Right.
I don't mean that in a kind of like lyrical sense. There's a direction that you want your song to be taking people, and you don't want that message to be spread out across different instruments at the same time. So
right. You want people to be escaping Hoogie Boogie Land.
exactly. Sometimes, like Escape for Hoogie Boogie Land, there are songs that can call for that kind of chaos and entropy to it. But I think.
Well, for what first, like you and I, like I know your songs, so just for people who don't know, like like your music or Escape from Hoogie Boogie Land, like take people through like the explanation of that song and kind of like yeah.
Okay, well, that song started as this will be almost a little insight into our songwriting, I guess. That song started as a simple bass idea, and the idea was creating a rhythmic structure that was just constantly decreasing, and it was based on eighth notes. And it was just 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3, 1 2 1, and it was going up the scale by the same degree. So it'd be going up 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3, 1 2 1, and giving each note their own part of the rhythm to have. The name Escape from Hoogie Boogie Land was based on a YouTube video that I had loved from my past, where this band, who is possibly the greatest band ever, is named Complete. And there's just a bunch of mulleted good old boys that are performing at a bar, and they said this next one's called Hoogie Boogie Land. And I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. So I said, man, we got to get out of this place. So it's a lot of fun. And those kind of comic influences are stuff that we as a band, I think, take more to heart than a lot of other bands do too.
Yeah. Like that's not that you bring. I like that point you mentioned about like the comedic aspects, because like coming over and hanging out with y'all are always like playing Super Smash Brothers, and always like watching. I mean, like the videos that you or Scott pulls up to watch. I'm just like, how do you make it to these corners of the internet? And
I think I've got to give Scott his credit. I dog on him a lot just because he's my buddy, and that's just the way it's always been. But I think I've got to give Scott his credit. Scott Tracy is a lot of the inspiration of the kind of ethereal, subconscious aspects of this band, in terms of imagery, in terms of song titles and stuff that our music evokes. A lot of that is him, and a lot of that is because this might be construed in the wrong way by some of the other members in the band, but I don't think anybody cares about our music as much as Scott does.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and like y'all, all of you. I mean, I'm not like I know the band, like, and I know all the guys. Like, y'all have all been extremely like generous and great to me, like over the years. So like, it's like every time I'm around you guys, it's like really great to like hear from all of y'all. But like, you know, me and Scott have hung out together, just, you know, and it's
You know, I met you.
he drinks music. I mean, it's like music is like definitely the thing that like he just wants to like. I'm always it's like he lives, eats, and breathes it. So it's like, um, but anyway, like, so I wanted to get into kind of like your background, like for music though, like kind of like where you come from and how you kind of like grew into like some of your inspirations and how you like developed.
Well, you know, it's funny. I think what started me was buying a drum set, and the only reason I ever bought a drum set was because of the game Rock Band, believe it or not. It was a big, I remember when that game came out and you saw the drums that came with it and you saw the guitar and there was a microphone. I remember I made my mom, like we were going to go out and find that game. I've never done Black Friday in my damn life. I've never done it. I probably never will again.
Yeah.
But that Black Friday, I remember going to Target.
You're fine.
Okay, cool. Going to Target at midnight and just waiting there all night. And they didn't have it, having to go to Best Buy afterwards, just so intent on getting that game. And then from there, you know, I bought a real drum set because I was so inspired by that game and the feelings that I felt from it, I guess. That for Christmas one year, I got a drum set. And to be honest, you know, I set it up and it sat in the basement for a long, long time until for one of my parents' anniversaries, my father bought my mother and the rest of the family tickets to the Police reunion show that was happening in Atlanta. And the Police was a band I knew peripherally because my parents had really loved them. My mom is a huge fan of that band. Mm-hmm. And Stuart Copeland is one of the most unique drummers that I've ever listened to, really. The way that he looks at a rhythm, the way that he has musical influences from both the West Indies and from the Middle East. There's so much about that band that seeing them in such a close parameter and seeing how this drummer operated, he would break sticks. He had a huge bucket of sticks. He would break them every song. And just when he did, he'd swing them straight up in the air. They would flip around, grab a new one, and get going again. And I was like, man, this guy is something else. So it took me to the drum kit, and that started me as a drummer. Now, what's funny about that story is years later, you know, I can only see my family, my father's side of the family in Iran in a certain number of ways. And one year we had a big family reunion in Istanbul, Turkey. And I was sitting in the lobby of that hotel, and there was a big jazz festival that was happening in Istanbul that summer. And I look across the lobby, and it's Stuart Copeland, the same guy who started me playing music probably 4 or 5 years before that, sitting in the lobby. And I turned to my sister and I start freaking out. I said, Sarah, that's him right there. She walks up to him and she goes, excuse me, is your name Stuart? He goes, yes, it is. Me and my mom walk up. She goes, you know, he's the reason that he became a drummer. You are. And he looked at my mom and he said, don't blame me for that.
Oh my God. So you got to like meet your idol.
Yeah.
Right?
No, they say they never to do that, but it was a great guy, great experience, and
nice.
Something I'll never forget.
Did he give you any pointers? Do you remember anything he said to you like on that in that moment?
One thing about I think celebrities is I don't want to stress them out too much. You know, they've got a life to live, and it's fucking. It's filled with.
You're fine. Honestly, like you know, I'm kind of like. It's cool with me. It's kind of like I'm kind of letting like the guest kind of like be the one that's like, hey, like yeah, it's totally fine with me, like reading the room on that. So yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
You know, I wanted that. I guess when they say never meet your heroes, I didn't want to give him too much of an opportunity to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I was just said, you know, I just shook his hand, something I'll never do with anybody ever again. And just let that experience be what it was. And it's still something that I carry with me, to this day.
Wow. Were there any, what other inspirations did you have, drummer wise or just musically?
I guess a lot of it was stories I heard. My grandfather was a jazz musician who was, an entertainer in World War II. And, he was a jazz bassist, stand-up bassist. And hearing stories about him, and my mom always said that my personality of always being in my own head and always making, corny jokes and always, dancing around the house was like my grandfather. Mm-hmm. I never met the guy, but there was a certain influence to think that there was, music in our blood. Yeah. But I didn't really have that person to directly look up to. I didn't really have, my mother or my father. I guess the closest thing was my sister, who would play bass and sing in a band. But pretty much when she graduated high school, she had dropped a lot of that stuff. I think it was just an outlet for something. I was feeling so many things at that age, which was middle school was a very stressful time in my life.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I wish I'd gotten to music. My brother, kind of similarly, he played guitar. This is actually his band's shirt. It was an Athens band that he was in, but he turned me on to a lot of music. But in middle school for me, it was when I started like writing a lot, and it wasn't, I didn't necessarily run with it the way that I kind of wish I did, just because I was really just kind of doing it because I like to do it. And I would read these stories aloud to like the class and make like them laugh. And I just kind of enjoyed kind of the response. I didn't really see oh, this is something that I should continue to do, aspire to. And then it's, recently it's kind of I've been oh, I have had this skill. I'm going to kind of lean into it a lot more, but definitely I kind of get what you're saying about middle school being a stressful time. And for me, having that writing outlet, was how I channeled it. How would you describe your kind of your music style?
You see, that's tough because, my influences are kind of all over the place. Like I said, I kind of started with that reggae, West Indian influenced music of the Police. Mm. But by the same token, I've been listening to Persian music that my father has shown me for years as well. And on top of that, my biggest influences now are jazz and kind of 60s soul influenced stuff like Motown, stuff more like 70s funk as well. Mm. Parliament, Brothers Johnson. What I love specifically with bass is, instrumentalists, people who play the bass well. Mm-hmm. And so much of that you see in funk music, guys like Thundercat, guys like Jaco Pastorius, where there was just such a virtuosic method in which these guys play their instruments. Michael League from Snarky Puppy is one of my heroes for sure. And so I think there's an element of the music that I write that reflects that as well, that reflects that either me or the band writes, Help Computer, that reflects this kind of multi influence that we try to reflect in our music.
Yeah, and I mean, I know Help Computer is, as we said, instrumental, but when it comes to you really seem to be the lead when it comes to presence wise, or kind of bring you're the one that's center stage and almost kind of directing the audience and that kind of thing. So do you see yourself as as kind of like the almost like taking the lead when you're on stage?
I don't think lead is. Oh shit! This makes things better. There we go. Much more lighting presses. Huh? I think lead isn't the right word that I think of. I think, and I only think this because someone had kind of mentioned it to me about being the front man of their band. I think I kind of look at it as a front man.
Right. And I didn't couch out lead as in leader, but like in the terms of like front man, like someone that kind of like the one that like engages the audience kind of the most.
Yeah, I kind of try to, translate some of what's happening musically in our stuff in a verbal sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of comfort and discomfort that happens in our music, and I think I try to reflect that in my stage presence as well. But I think the only reason that I do that more than maybe other people in the band is because I might have the easiest job to do. With Scott, there's not a lot that he can do in terms of dancing out in front, being a drummer, having a saxophone player. There's limited amounts of movement that he can get into while maintaining a steady airflow.
Yeah.
And then of course I get the blessing and the opportunity to work with, or used to be able to work with two of the best guitarists I've ever met, and still working with one of the best guitarists I ever met. And Thomas, who's the guitarist of Help Computer, is somebody who never opens his eyes when he's playing music ever.
Okay, because like I've always seen him looking down, and the thing that's funny about that is like, like that's the way my brother plays as well. And like my brother's a really good guitar player, but it's like even like he was playing like Athfest, like the Georgia Theater on like this big stage, and like Colin's still like hunched over, like playing that way, and it's just like. But are you serious that like Thomas plays with his eyes closed?
I've never seen Thomas play a show with his eyes open in my life, dude. Even in practice, because he's to my right. He always sits next to me. He's pretty much the closest guy to me. Yeah. And sometimes we'll be practicing a song, and I'll be staring at him the whole time. And I swear to God, he does not open his eyes to look at me once or to look at anything.
Well, what he plays is always great. It's like he's never off.
Thomas is a very, very skilled, very, very talented musician. He's a little bit older than the rest of us. Mm-hmm. So I think he takes more of that experience, and he takes more of that being in other bands longer than us type deal. But also with Thomas is we never have to worry about him being the squeaky wheel. Sometimes what's been hard in our music is that it's so, based off individual influence sometimes, that a lot of those individuals get in the way of it. Me and Scott have had head-on collisions. This. Have had head-on collisions with songwriting. And it's not, I think the best lesson that we've learned from that in the last year and a half is don't take it personally. What we do in this band in terms of making music and in terms of trying to make the best, 4, 5, 6 minutes possible is leaving, your ego at the door and just making sure that your attentions are toward making that song as good as it possibly can be.
Right. Where do you hope to see music take you once, assuming it all, once we kind of come back normal and we're able to like play live shows again, and you're able to tour and do all that kind of stuff? What are you hoping to get to as far as music goes?
Right now, I think what's the biggest goal is to play a show. For multiple reasons, because we haven't had the ability to play a show since our guitarist has left. We still need to write more music because there are songs now that we'll never be able to play again. Mm-hmm. So we need to be able to write that, but being away from each other has made that so difficult.
Right. And so during this time, like I've seen you on Instagram performing songs that are those original songs, or are those like have you been doing originals and covers, like a mixture of both?
It's a variant. Sometimes I've been doing covers. I did a funk cover of My Sharona because Corona has made me sing that song over and over again. So I was like, the only way I'm going to be able to get this song out of my head is to just make a cover of it, because that's the only thing that's going to kill the song. But there's a couple songs that I'm putting the finishing touches on right now. It's called Vivance, and that hopefully will be coming out somewhat soon. And I also have one that I'm working for the live video for this podcast, which is, I don't really have a name for it yet, but it's kind of the first song that I've written on piano since starting piano. So it was something that it was like a challenge that I wanted to get through and see if I could do it.
Yeah. So yeah, looking forward to it. What was did you say the name, or what is the name for that one?
That one, I don't think I have a name for it yet. It's pretty much just inspired by a lot of what I've been doing during this time, which is pretty much every day I take an hour-long shower, which I just sit on the floor. I get one of those pillbox speakers, and I wrap it in a plastic bag, and I take it in the shower, and I just sit in the shower for an hour. I think about whatever. And that's been a sense of comfort in my life recently. So I was like, you know what?
Is the song going to be an hour? I mean,
I just made everything fall in here. Oh my god.
But so like, I'm kind of at the end of my questions. One thing, I did want to ask, just also questions about this time. Like, what have you been seeing of other musicians, other bands? What have you seen during this time? Bands that you're connected with through like the local music scene. What have you been seeing that's impressed you? Or have you seen anything that's really caught your attention?
I think it's hard for local artists to kind of try and find something to do this time, something that feels worthwhile. And I think that's what a lot of us are struggling with, is that there's this feeling of maybe a lack of purpose is the way to call it. So much of what we do is fueled by seeing each other, playing music with each other. Mm-hmm. And, there are some bands that have made the choice to quarantine with each other. And I think that was, a smart decision to make. Wasn't one that I felt like I could personally take, staying away from my family for that long. Yeah. But in terms of making content that is worthwhile, a lot of it has been people showing ideas. Like, hey, this is something that we're working on. As soon as we're going to have the ability to, look out for the final product. Stuff like that, or, people who have the outlet to be people like, bigger musicians. Something I was just watching the other day was Hosier. Hosier did a whole, most artists now are doing a lot of online concerts, Instagram live concerts. Mm-hmm. And I think it's made a solid positive impact on people. But at the same time, I think a lot of local bands don't see that as a feasible idea. Number one, because, just for viewership methods, especially if you're doing something live, Instagram Live, while a great platform for people who are more popular than me, are, it's a great success for them. But I think for us, it's very difficult to get more than 10 people on something like that.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, what do you think, like do you see, like, the goal of bringing, getting back to the point where we have, live shows, or do you see, anything kind of coming along that at least for the time, could help local bands at least be able to at least, like, perform something, or at least have some kind of way to even just meet up and practice?
You've touched on something that is really kind of a struggle for me to think about, because I think I think in terms of the live music spectrum, I don't know what the impact of this virus is going to be on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of people are people who will save up money, big money, to go see the big bands that they like, and will every now and then go to a local show. People who are legitimately into music are mostly like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm afraid is that's going to make people be more choosy in the kinds of shows that they go to and the amount of shows that they go to and the kind of money that they'll spend for a show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it'll divert into kind of two crowds, the kind of crowds that are only going to go to a show if they, saved up. I saved up my money to see Drake in March. I'm going to go see Drake in March. Mm-hmm. There's definitely people that are like that. But on the other hand, I think there are people that are going to be like, I'm just going to go see local shows. I'm going to make it my point to see a local show once a month mm-hmm. and support the scene. And I hope that there are a lot more people than I think of that category, because I think the scene is the local music scene. I don't know what we're going to see, the circumstance after all this is done. I don't know what we're going to see.
Well, hard times usually are what lead to, great change, or like someone coming up with
innovation.
And, I've been thinking lately just how music has always been, there to like get to be there during like tough times. And so like coming up with, I'm, for me right now, one thing doing these interviews, like I'm always looking for music to put behind the interviews I do. And there's a lot of people out there like generating online content, and what's going through my mind is they all need music, to be able to like, go with like the videos that they're making, or like anything that's being going out there.
Palatable.
Was that?
To be more palatable.
Yeah. So like that's one way that right now I could see music being kind of like tailored for like to fit the current needs, to be able to, like if you were to like, and I did this interview with Annie Gibson of Smith's Old Bar, and they're doing a lot of stuff with they're focusing mostly on like the kitchen, like the restaurant aspect, for giving kitchen and things like that. And it's kind of made me think about like content that meets the current needs, where it's going out for where it's videos being done on things like giving kitchen, on health for healthcare workers, for like music cares, and like all of these different charities, and like hospitality sorts of things, where it's like if you're creating content for that, it's like if musicians could be writing songs for that, it seems like it would be going out on Instagram. Even if there's not a lot of, even if it was just through listen, like getting people to listen to it through Instagram, I feel like that's finding at least some audience.
What I'll say about that is that there's two holes that music fills, and they're both filled in different ways. I'm sure that there are a lot of artists. A visual art is something that I don't really comprehend or don't really understand, and don't really dissect well. But what I'll say about visual artists is, there may be a lot of them that I can't speak for in terms of making art. Maybe a lot of them have enjoyed this time. They've been able to be more reflective and had a better chance to really dive in deep into their art. But I think with music, there is an essence of that. There is an essence of writing a song. There's an essence of learning a song. There's an essence of learning your instrument better that is very fulfilling. But by the same token, until we're playing shows again, until we're out in front of an audience. And a big part of it too is the community of music, going out to a show and talking to the other bands, seeing them play their set, waiting for them to get off stage. Hey man, that was a hell of a set. Talking about music, setting up future stuff. So much of that communication, could be lost. And I think that's what is, there's an essence of fear of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to
end it on a positive note. Let me ask you this.
Right.
Let me ask you this.
So what positives do you like come to mind? Like how would you kind of like what's like your hope going forward in terms of like I don't know if it's a silver bullet but just like what keeps you hopeful during these times?
What our future is going to be like, a future where the mass is more reflective of the life that we're lucky to live, people who are happier to live the life that they live. And hopefully someone who can invent some kind of software where people can collaborate musically on an instrument miles away from each other. Because that would be sick, Neil. But Neil, before we leave, I want to ask you a question.
That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to get peeped at from this. But anyway, I'm at the end of my questions, but would you like to give one final plug for the album coming out and where people can go and find that?
Pixelidian is an album that's going to be available through Apple Music, through Spotify. It's also going to be available on our website, helpcomputer.rocks. Hopefully we'll be playing some live shows for that as soon as possible. And Neil, I want to end this with a question for you, because I know you're a basketball guy.
Yes.
In your opinion, did coronavirus prevent LeBron James from getting another ring?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to.
So you think the Lakers definitely would have won that 7-game series in LA?
I don't know if I need. So I think the answer is yes, because he was on a mission, especially after Kobe.
Yeah.
And was starting to round into shape. He was always in shape this year, but like he was starting to like really, really turn it on. Got himself into the MVP race.
AD was a great partner.
I believe that he felt, and like I truly feel this as well. This was his last year to win a championship. I think that he knew his time is starting to, like, this is his last best chance to win. And after this year, I think it goes steadily down, especially given the fact that there's no Kevin Durant, the Golden State Warriors, that they were all injured. Yeah. I think that he was looking at this going, this is it. This is my chance to get it. And I'm not, there's one other thing out there that I don't think is crazy. And people have started to, the question has been asked, was LeBron seeing the end of his career? And I don't know if that question was directed for this year, or was he just seeing it like his coming in? But before this season started, I looked at it. I started having the mindset that if he were to win a title, which would give him 4, mm-hmm. Does he truly believe that he's going to win 2 more in the next? Does he truly believe he's going to three-peat and get 6 to equal Jordan?
Is that even part of the argument anymore?
Right. And so this is it. Is if he doesn't think that he can get 6, he gets his 4th, which is the same that I believe that's the same Magic had. He'd have won a ring with every single franchise. He's got this media company out in Los Angeles. And the other 2 goals that he could reach our scoring title. He could still get that, but that would require playing 5 more years. How badly does he want that? The other one is possibly playing with his son, but what could also happen is he retires this year, his son gets drafted, and then like Jordan, he says, I want to come back for 1 year, and he ends up playing on the same team as his son for 1 year. And so that's why I'm saying, I think if he won a title this year, he's looking at going, I'm 37. There's no way I'm not going to get to Jordan 6. And would I rather retire with some of my youth left, or would I want to keep going another 5 years? Because, to run a media company, to like make Space Jam 2, like basketball is taking up a lot of his time.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think here's the thing too, though, is I think the Lakers kind of offer that balance where, and let's say at the end of the year, let's say at the end of the season, they do finish the season, they have the playoffs, and the Lakers do win a championship. I think the Lakers offer him this opportunity to play a substantially less amount of games than an average player would for, a still considerable big price, and have him stationed in LA. There's a chance that he could, if the Lakers continue to build the team that they have, which they have with AD and stuff like that.
It's not a terrible idea. It's just he wouldn't. The reception of it would be.
He wouldn't want to coast.
Because I remember like Phil Jackson years ago wanted to do the deal where he was only gonna like coach home games, and I don't think, and everyone was like, it was like, I'm gonna coach home games and playoff games, and it's like,
as a coach, that doesn't make any sense.
LeBron could do that. It's like, I'm only gonna play the home games and playoff games, but it's just the reception for the rest of the league would be like, oh man, you're soft.
It's a considerable difference. I mean, as a coach, you've got to build your system. As a coach, you've got to get your players to function at a level and in a system that you want it at. In terms of a player, if you can get a team that brings the Lakers to the playoffs without LeBron being the piece, the centerpiece of all of that, no matter what, LeBron is always going to be that guy who can come into a game and make the biggest impact of any player there.
Yeah, you're right. I think in that, but I think from his standpoint, I think he's one person that likes to be part of the process.
I agree with that.
If he was out, I don't think if he was part of the everyday process, it would be as enjoyable to him. I think he likes to be. I think that's part of like the greatness and also the negative of LeBron. Is he just likes to be part of everything. He wants to be able to control everything, and so I think that would, if he wasn't playing, if he wasn't with, he likes being with the team. I think he really likes being like a team guy. So that's one reason I could see him not.
Player coach, possibly?
Some say he's already player GM.
He is. Yeah, he is, dude. All right, Neil, man, it's been great talking to you, dude.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely looking forward to that album.
Oh, yeah, man. I'll send you a copy as soon as we have it.
For sure. Anyway, thank you, Matteen. Have a great day.
Love and peace.